Before you hear this story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button if you've ever felt powerless against someone who should have protected you. Comment karma if you believe justice always finds a way. And share this with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their darkness. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's proof that even in our deepest shadows, we can find the power to rise. The desert sun in Scottsdale scorched everything it touched, but nothing burned quite like the ice in Morgan's eyes when they looked at me. I'm Ren, and for 9 years, I lived in a house where love was currency and I was always bankrupt. Morgan wasn't just family, they were my older sibling, the one our parents trusted implicitly, the golden child who could do no wrong. To the outside world, Morgan was successful, charismatic, a pillar of the community who ran a prestigious counseling practice near elite DNA behavioral health on the affluent side of town. But behind closed doors, they were my personal demon, systematically destroying me piece by piece. It started small, as these things always do. You're too sensitive, Ren. Nobody will believe you. You're lucky I even tolerate you. The words dripped like acid, each one carefully chosen to eat away at my foundation. Morgan had studied psychology, knew exactly which buttons to push, which wounds to salt. They'd learned about survivor mindsets and psychological warfare in their training, but instead of healing, they chose to harm. The torture was methodical, clinical even. Morgan would gaslight me at family dinners, twisting my words until even I doubted my own memories. They'd sabotage my relationships with calculated precision, planting seeds of doubt that grew into forests of isolation. Every achievement I managed was minimized, every failure was magnified and broadcasted to anyone who would listen. Remember when Ren thought they could start their own business? Morgan would laugh at gatherings, their voice honeyed with false concern. Poor thing doesn't understand how the real world works. Good thing I'm here to protect them from themselves. Our parents, aging and trusting, never saw through the facade. Morgan had convinced them I was troubled, unstable, needed constant supervision. They controlled my access to family resources, monitored my communications, and slowly, systematically, drove me to the edge of breakdown. By year 5, I'd attempted to leave 3 times. Each time, Morgan found me, brought me back with promises of change that evaporated like morning dew in the Arizona heat. By year 7, I'd stopped trying. The psychological prison was complete, invisible bars made of shame, fear, and learned helplessness. But even in the deepest darkness, something in me refused to die completely. Late at night, when Morgan thought I was broken beyond repair, I would practice the techniques I'd learned from stolen moments on the internet, building a survivor mentality, one breath at a time. I was documenting everything, though Morgan didn't know it. Every cruel word, every manipulative action, recorded and hidden in places they'd never think to look. What Morgan never knew was that our grandmother, before she died, had seen through their mask. She'd watched from her sickbed as Morgan played the devoted grandchild in public while treating me like a burden in private. 3 months before she passed, she called me to her room alone. "Ren," she whispered, her papery hand gripping mine with surprising strength. "I see what they're doing to you. I see everything." She pressed a key into my palm, a safety deposit box at Wells Fargo, registered under a trust in my name alone. "I've been moving money aside for years," she said. "Investments, bonds, some property in Sedona. It's all yours, but you can't access it until you're 28. Morgan doesn't know it exists." The inheritance was substantial, $5.3 million in diversified assets, carefully hidden through legal trusts and shell companies her lawyer had established. But more than money, she gave me something else, proof that I wasn't crazy, that someone else saw the truth. I became obsessed with psychological warfare tactics after that, studying them in secret. I learned about the gray rock method, making myself so boring that Morgan would lose interest. I studied attachment theory, trauma bonding, the psychology of narcissistic abuse. Every book on manipulation, every article on gaslighting, I absorbed like a sponge. Morgan had made one critical error in their abuse: they'd taught me to be invisible, to hide in plain sight. They never noticed when I started therapy sessions online under a fake name, learning from my therapist about complex PTSD and recovery strategies. They never saw me building my evidence cache, recordings on a hidden phone, documents scanned and uploaded to encrypted cloud storage, a detailed journal hidden in a safety deposit box of my own. I learned to play the broken victim perfectly while underneath, I was becoming something else entirely. Every insult was catalogued. Every financial manipulation documented. Every witness to their public persona carefully noted. I was building a case, not for court, but for something far more devastating, complete and total social annihilation. The therapy taught me about tactical empathy, understanding your abuser's motivations not to excuse them, but to predict and counter them. Morgan feared exposure above all else. Their entire identity was built on being the successful, caring counselor who helped others. The thought of their clients, colleagues, and community seeing the real them was their worst nightmare. My 28th birthday was approaching, January 15, 2025. Morgan had planned a massive celebration, not for me, but for themselves. They'd invited all their colleagues, clients who'd become friends, and most importantly, the board members of the Arizona Psychological Association where they served as ethics committee chair. "It's time everyone sees how well I've taken care of you," Morgan said, their smile sharp as glass. "You'll thank me publicly for everything I've done. You'll tell them how lost you'd be without me." The party was set for January 10 at the Phoenician Resort, a lavish affair that Morgan claimed was their gift to me but was really their stage for another performance. They'd even arranged for a documentary filmmaker to capture the event, planning to use it for their upcoming book about supporting troubled family members. What Morgan didn't know was that I'd been in contact with several of their former clients through anonymous channels. 3 had filed complaints that were mysteriously dismissed. 2 had attempted suicide after their treatment. All of them were afraid to come forward because Morgan had connections everywhere. The night before the party, Morgan cornered me in my room. "You'll wear what I picked out. You'll say what I've written for you. And you'll finally admit to everyone that your problems are your own fault, not mine." They held up a speech they'd written, full of self-deprecation and praise for them. "Memorize it. If you embarrass me tomorrow, if you deviate even one word from this script, you'll regret it for whatever's left of your pathetic life." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the darkness, feeling the weight of 9 years crushing down on me. But I also felt something else, the key to my grandmother's safety deposit box, warm against my skin where I'd worn it on a chain all these years. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning of January 10 arrived with unusual clouds, a rare overcast day in Scottsdale. I'd been awake since 3 a.m., not from anxiety, but from preparation. My inheritance would be accessible in 5 days, but I didn't need the money yet. I needed something far more valuable, the truth to be revealed in the most devastating way possible. I'd contacted a forensic accountant months earlier, someone from Jacksonville who specialized in financial abuse cases. They'd discovered that Morgan had been slowly draining our parents' retirement accounts, using their power of attorney to fund their lavish lifestyle while making it appear I was the drain on the family resources. Every withdrawal was carefully documented, every forged signature catalogued. My online therapist, who I'd finally told the truth about my identity, had connected me with a victims' rights advocate who specialized in psychological abuse cases. She'd helped me understand that what I was planning wasn't revenge, it was justice. "Exposure is not cruelty when it's simply revealing the truth," she'd said. I'd reached out to the documentary filmmaker Morgan had hired, sending them an anonymous package 2 days before the party. It contained excerpts from my recordings, testimonials from Morgan's victims, and a simple note: "The real story is more compelling than the fiction you've been hired to film." The filmmaker, an investigative journalist before turning to documentaries, smelled a Pulitzer-worthy story. They brought additional cameras, hidden ones, and a team ready to capture something entirely different than a birthday celebration. I also sent packages to every guest, delivered precisely 1 hour before the party. Each contained a single recording of Morgan's voice saying horrific things about that specific person. The CEO they called pathetically insecure, the judge they'd laughed about manipulating, the clients they'd mocked for their vulnerabilities. Each package had a note: "This is what they say about you when you're not listening. Imagine what they do to family." My appearance was carefully calculated. I wore the outfit Morgan had chosen, but underneath, I wore a wire connected to the documentary crew's equipment. Every word would be broadcast live to their recording devices. The speech Morgan had written lay folded in my pocket, but I'd memorized something entirely different. 9 years of pain transformed into 5 minutes of truth that would destroy their carefully constructed world. As I stood before the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. The broken person Morgan had created was gone. In their place stood someone who understood that sometimes, the only way to stop a monster is to let everyone see what hides beneath the mask. The forensic accountant was on standby, ready to release their findings to the authorities the moment I gave the signal. The victim's rights advocate had connected me with an attorney who was prepared to file multiple civil suits. The former clients were gathered in a hotel nearby, ready to attend the party uninvited but not unexpected. I thought of a Reddit post I'd read once, about someone called Narcissist19 who'd endured years of manipulation from their partner before finally breaking free. They'd written, "The best revenge isn't destroying them, it's letting them destroy themselves through their own actions being brought to light." The ballroom at the Phoenician was magnificent, all gold and crystal under soft lighting. 70 people had gathered, the cream of Scottsdale's psychological and legal community. Morgan stood at the entrance, greeting each guest with practiced charm, occasionally gesturing toward me with patronizing affection. "There's our special birthday girl," they'd say, the diminutive intentional, reducing me to a child despite my 28 years. The documentary crew was filming everything, though Morgan believed they were capturing their magnanimous gesture. What they didn't notice were the additional cameras, the ones capturing every angle, every micro-expression, every tell that would soon become evidence. At precisely 8 p.m., Morgan clinked their glass, calling for silence. "Tonight, we celebrate not just Ren's birthday, but their journey toward wellness under my care." I watched as several guests checked their phones. The packages had been timed to send a notification now. Eyes widened. People shifted uncomfortably. The judge in attendance turned pale as she heard Morgan's voice calling her too stupid to see what I'm doing right under her nose. Morgan, oblivious to the shifting energy, continued. "Ren has prepared some words." I interrupted, standing slowly. The room turned to me, and I saw Morgan's jaw tighten. I wasn't supposed to speak until called. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the venue sound system, the tech crew was in on it, and let Morgan's voice fill the room. "Ren is so pathetic, I could probably convince them they're responsible for climate change. Watch me make them apologize for breathing at dinner tonight." The laughter on the recording was cruel, calculated. The room was silent except for that recorded voice, Morgan's voice, dissecting my every vulnerability with surgical precision to someone on the phone. That's edited," Morgan stammered. "That's taken out of context." "Here's context," I said, my voice steady for the first time in 9 years. "For 9 years, you've systematically destroyed my sense of self while presenting yourself as my savior. You've stolen $847,000 from our parents' retirement while making them believe I was the financial burden. You've violated every ethical guideline of your profession, using your psychological training as a weapon rather than a tool for healing." The documentary filmmaker stepped forward. "We've been investigating these allegations for 48 hours. We have 17 former clients ready to testify about professional misconduct, 3 with recorded sessions where you revealed other patients' confidential information for your amusement." The door opened, and in walked the 3 former clients who'd attempted suicide, followed by 2 others who Morgan had manipulated into inappropriate relationships. The victim's rights advocate was with them, along with 3 officers from the Arizona State Board of Psychologist Examiners. Morgan's face cycled through expressions: shock, rage, fear, and finally, the cold mask I knew so well. "You planned this," they hissed at me. "I learned from the best," I replied. "You taught me about psychological warfare. You just never expected me to be a good student." The next 72 hours destroyed Morgan's life more thoroughly than they'd spent 9 years destroying mine. The documentary filmmaker released a teaser that went viral on TikTok within hours. 49 million views of Morgan saying ethics are for people too weak to take what they want while serving on an ethics committee. The Arizona Board of Psychologist Examiners emergency suspended their license pending investigation. By morning, every client had demanded their records and several filed malpractice suits. The hidden cameras had captured Morgan attempting to physically intimidate me in a corner during the party, lunging at me before being restrained. Assault charges were filed. Our parents, finally seeing the evidence, were devastated but not at me. The forensic accountant had shown them every transaction, every forged document. The retirement funds were frozen, and criminal charges for elder financial abuse were filed by the state. Morgan's colleagues distanced themselves immediately. The practice they'd built crumbled as partners dissolved agreements and staff resigned en masse. The speaking engagements, the book deal, the prestigious positions, everything evaporated like smoke. But the true destruction came from social media. The documentary clip spread beyond TikTok to Reddit, Twitter, Instagram. Hashtags #therapist from hell and #Scottsdale manipulator trended for weeks. Every public appearance Morgan had made was scrutinized, every interview dissected for signs of their true nature. I received messages from hundreds of survivors who saw their own abusers in Morgan's actions. The documentary filmmaker pivoted their project to focus on psychological abuse by mental health professionals, with my story as the centerpiece. Netflix picked it up for distribution. 3 months later, at the trial for elder abuse, Morgan took the stand. They tried their usual tactics: charm, deflection, playing victim. But the jury had seen the recordings, heard the testimonies. The verdict was guilty on all charges. 5 years in prison, full restitution, and lifetime ban from practicing psychology. As they were led away in handcuffs, Morgan looked at me one last time. "You've destroyed everything." "No," I replied, finally free of their influence. "I just showed everyone what was already there." 6 months after the party, I stood in my new home in Sedona, the one my grandmother had secretly purchased for me years ago. The red rocks outside my window caught the morning light, painting everything in warm, healing colors. The $5.3 million inheritance had been released, but more valuable than money was my freedom. I'd started a foundation for survivors of psychological abuse, especially those harmed by the very people meant to help them. We'd funded legal support for 17 victims in our first quarter. The documentary had won 3 awards and raised millions in awareness. My therapist, my real one, not the online alias I'd used before, had helped me understand that healing wasn't linear. Some days were harder than others. The 9 years of abuse had left scars that would take time to fade. But I was learning to see them not as weaknesses, but as proof of survival. Morgan was serving their sentence in Florence, Arizona. They'd written me letters, first angry, then pleading, finally attempting manipulation again. I'd turned them all over to my lawyer unread. Their words had no power over me anymore. Our parents had recovered most of their retirement funds and moved to a smaller home near mine. We were rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully. They attended their own therapy, processing their guilt at not seeing what was happening. I didn't blame them. Morgan had been that skilled at deception. The former clients Morgan had hurt became an unexpected support network. We met monthly, sharing stories and strength. One had returned to school to become a therapist herself, determined to be what Morgan should have been. I'd started speaking publicly about psychological abuse, using my story to help others recognize the signs. At a conference in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'd connected with elite DNA behavioral health to establish a treatment program for survivors, a young person approached me after my presentation. "My sister is doing to me what Morgan did to you," they whispered, tears streaming. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was alone. "You're not crazy," I told them, remembering my grandmother's words to me. "And you're never alone." I gave them the resources they needed, connected them with advocates, and watched as they began their own journey to freedom. This was happening everywhere I spoke: survivors finding their voices, abusers being exposed, systems changing to prevent future harm. 1 year later, January 15, 2026. I returned to the Phoenician resort, not for revenge but for redemption. In the same ballroom where my life had changed, we held the first annual Survivors Summit. 300 attendees, all survivors of psychological abuse, gathered to share, support, and strategize. The documentary had sparked a national conversation about abuse by mental health professionals. 3 states had passed Wren's law, requiring additional oversight and reporting mechanisms. The statistics were staggering. My story had given courage to thousands to come forward. Morgan had tried to appeal from prison, but each attempt failed as more evidence surfaced. Former colleagues revealed suspicious patterns going back years. The investigation had spread to their undergraduate years, finding a trail of manipulation and harm that started long before me. Standing at the podium where I'd exposed them a year ago, I looked out at the faces before me. Some bore the haunted look I once wore, others glowed with newfound freedom. All of them were warriors in their own battles against their shadows. They tried to break us, I began, my voice carrying the strength of every survivor in the room. They used our trust, our love, our vulnerabilities as weapons against us. They made us question our reality, our worth, our right to exist without pain. The room was silent, but it was a different silence than that night a year ago. This was the silence of recognition, of shared understanding. But here's what they never understood, I continued, feeling my grandmother's spirit with me. Every act of cruelty taught us resilience. Every gaslight showed us how to recognize lies. Every moment they tried to diminish us, we were secretly growing stronger, gathering evidence, preparing for the moment we could rise. We are not victims, I declared, and the room erupted in agreement. We are survivors. We are warriors. We are the inheritance of truth in a world of manipulation. The summit raised $2.3 million for survivor resources. Morgan's former office building had been purchased and converted into a free counseling center for abuse survivors. The ultimate irony, the place where they'd planned others' destruction now housed their healing. As the event ended and people began to leave, many stopped to thank me. But I redirected each one. Thank yourself for surviving. Thank yourself for speaking. Thank yourself for being here. That night, alone in my hotel room, I pulled out the key my grandmother had given me. It had unlocked more than money, it had unlocked my future. I thought of Morgan in their cell, stripped of everything they'd built on others' pain. There was no satisfaction in their suffering, only relief that they could hurt no one else. My phone buzzed with a message from the filmmaker. The documentary just passed 100 million views globally. Congressional hearing on therapeutic abuse scheduled for next month. You did this. But I hadn't done it alone. Every survivor who spoke up, every ethical professional who reported suspicious colleagues, every person who chose to believe victims, we did this together. Looking directly at the camera, as if speaking to you, the viewer. If you're watching this and seeing your own story in mine, know this, you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not alone. That person who makes you doubt your reality, who tears you down while claiming to build you up, who uses their power to control rather than care, they are the problem, not you. Document everything. Tell someone you trust. Seek help from those outside their influence. Build your evidence, your support network, your escape plan. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, let the truth destroy what they built on lies. The path from victim to survivor to victor isn't easy. Some days you'll want to give up. Some nights the memories will haunt you. But every step forward is a victory. Every day you choose yourself over them is triumph. They wanted to break you. Instead, you'll break free. They wanted to silence you. Instead, you'll speak truth. They wanted to destroy you. Instead, you'll rise from those ashes stronger than they ever imagined possible. Your story matters. Your pain is valid. Your healing is possible. And your victory, when it comes, and it will come, will inspire others to find their own. Remember, the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's letting the truth do what truth does, illuminate the shadows where monsters hide. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to become despite it. Rise, survivor. Your time is now.